No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken, episode number 256. A very special edition of the Uncancelled Interview coming up. The one, the only, the original loose woman before the show went woke and became an epic failure, Carol Mcgiffin, the legendary broadcaster, podcaster, columnist, and author, joins Outspoken for the first time. Now, as a free speech warrior who found herself cancelled by the MSM after taking on globalist authoritarianism during COVID, how worried do we need to be as Britain now sees a host of political prisoners, from Tommy Robinson to Lucy Connolly? Also coming up on the show today, does the government have any plan to stop the invasion of the UK via our southern border? What caused loose women to go woke? And after half of its jobs and episodes were axed, is it the end of daytime TV on Woke ITV? And should any of us really care? No Uncancelled Aftershow today, but we will return next week. So please do sign up to watch on Substack, www.outspoken.live. You can register completely for free to join the Outspoken revolution. But now, let's go. Oh, Carol Mcgiffin, it's taken me a long time to convince you to do this.
I know, I'm sorry, but you know what I'm like. I've got a bit of Zoom phobia.
But you're here. You're sort of coming out of semi-retirement for me. Is that fair to say?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I have a couple of other jobs, but yeah, yes, absolutely I am. And I haven't been on a screen for a long, long time, apart from maybe, the other thing on Instagram. But no, I mean, it's got to be at least a year, 2 years maybe. So yeah, it's especially for you, Dan. Well, I missed you so much and I haven't seen you for so long.
I know, it's been too long. It really, really has been too long. And the last time I saw you, Caroline, I have to thank you. I was in the middle of my cancellation hell and you were an absolute rock, which you can't say for many people in this industry. So I so appreciate it.
I felt for you. I really felt for you. But look at you now.
Now we're here, we're going.
You're right back. Yes, good for you.
And look, Carol, we've got so much to talk about. Obviously, I want to come to everything that's gone on at our former employer, Woke ITV, as I call it later in the show. But we've got to kick off with the news. And I think the most disturbing development since we last spoke, although I'm sure it's something, to be honest, that you did predict, was the fact that now in the United Kingdom, we actually have political prisoners. We actually have in our country people who are behind bars because they challenged the narrative, they posted something on X, they posted something on Facebook that maybe the authorities didn't like. I mean, this is truly dystopian, but something that I guess you saw coming after COVID.
Yeah, it's really quite disturbing, isn't it, really, that people, just for having an opposite opinion to something and dare to criticise something that the government is pushing at the time, it really is 1984, isn't it? It's like you can't have wrong think. You can't think any other way other than the way that they're trying to tell you to think. And that people can get locked up. In a way, I think a lot of these, the cases at the moment are there really to scare the population into not having wrong think and not thinking the opposite way, because there's so much publicity around them as well. And I don't include Tommy Robinson in that. I think that Tommy Robinson has always been an enemy of the state. They've always treated him like, he's an absolute criminal. I mean, they let people out of jail for less. I mean, some of the criminals that are roaming the streets at the moment that you read, you go, oh, he's got 18 months for raping kids or whatever. And you think, hang on, and Tommy Robinson spent a good chunk of the last few years in prison. And other people go to prison, like Bernie Spothoff, that we both know, and the Lucy Connolly case as well. I mean, it's absolutely outrageous and it's disgusting. It gets criticised by other leaders around the world. and it's like, what is going on? Why aren't people allowed to say what they think anymore?
But we did see it over COVID, didn't we? I mean, Peter Lynch, who was the political prisoner behind bars, died. We're told, Carol, of course, that this is a suicide, nothing to see here, nothing to investigate. Who actually knows what happened behind bars? Because you had Sly News reporting the fact that these Muslim gangs who control most of our prisons now were actually planning to target people who were imprisoned over the course of those so-called riots. And I say so-called riots, by the way, because actually, if you look into what was going on at that time, a lot of those riots were infiltrated by Antifa to try and create like a far-right bogeyman, which actually all of the official reports, Carol, have now admitted wasn't there. But Peter Lynch, right, he is someone who we would have agreed with on virtually every position, right? When it came to Brexit and globalism and the authoritarianism, he was famous, Carol, for holding that sign, which simply challenged a whole load of elements of corruption in terms of the World Economic Forum and Davos. I mean, all things that you have spoken about over the past few years. Why the hell did he end up in jail and is now dead? And the fact that that is not a national story, I think, is what shocks me so much.
Yeah, it never is though, is it? I mean, that is truly terrifying. And all he was doing is what, we've been trying to do for a long, long time, is tell the truth. Now, the government doesn't want anybody to know what they're doing, what's going on. And so if they jail these people, we don't know, you're right, we don't know what happened to him in prison, but every time when they say, oh, there was a suicide, I mean, he might well have killed himself, because what a terrible situation to end up in for literally telling the truth and trying to warn people what's coming and what's happening. But it's when it's like, oh, let's not talk about this now, because what will people think? It really is. It's like the corruption and the gaslighting and everything that the government is indulging in at the moment it is like reading 1984. It is exactly like that now. People are watched all the time. They're being monitored all the time. They're talking about bringing in a brick card. They're talking about digital currency. That all of these things mean that everyone who thinks they have freedom really doesn't anymore. And this is what people have been trying to warn other people about. But you know what, Dan? I think the biggest problem is people, they can't hear it. And it's mainly because they can't handle the truth. It's kind of too awful and too terrible, isn't it? For people to get their head around it. It did start in COVID, and people then couldn't get their head around the truth. They couldn't believe that what was going on might not have been real, if you like. And then you had all the stuff with the vaccines, and people wanted to believe that these vaccines were, they were needed. Of course they weren't needed. Nobody needed those vaccines. But everybody kind of went along with it because they couldn't think of the alternative, and that is that the government was actually trying to harm you. So, and I don't know how you get around that, because, up to a point at the moment, I'm living in the south of France, having a lovely life, and I've kind of got my head in the sand over a lot of things, because it drives you mad if you think about it too much, and you talk about and try and deal with what's going on all the time. It does get you down, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it does. And that's why some people choose to bury their head in the sand. And I think especially when you see the targeting, right, of a man like Peter Lynch, simply a demonstrator trying to wake the world up, right, now dead, or actually a housewife or a grandmother like Lucy Connolly or Julie Sweeney. It's almost like what the government is saying, Carol, is it's just not worth challenging the narrative. You will lose everything. We will take your freedom. We will take your family from you. We might even take your life. And if you're someone who's got a family life, who isn't in the media, who isn't working in this world, I can completely understand why loads of people have just deleted their social media accounts and thought, I can't take the risk. And that is chilling.
It is actually, because self-censorship is this is how they shut you up, because you have to self-censor because you're kind of aware of what might happen. I mean, I can't actually see them, nipping down to the south of France to drag me back to prison. They might actually. I can see them doing that.
The police did turn up at Alison Pearson's house. I mean, when that happened, I was a bit like, oh wow, this is another level, because you actually are going for mainstream journalists. I mean, Alison Pearson is one of the only, I would argue, brave journalists working in the mainstream media left in the UK, and they did come for her.
Yeah, well, this is it. They can come for anybody, anyone who says anything. Or, I watch videos on YouTube of people who have had the police come round and acting in a really aggressive and shocking way because they've put a post out on social media. Now, if that's not a warning to people to just don't ever challenge it yourself, just self-censor every single time. I've seen a lot on Twitter lately, sorry, I still call it Twitter, X,
yes.
Of people saying that they have voluntarily been self-censoring because they're kind of worried about what happens, and then they say, well, no, I'm not going to do it anymore. But you don't know if they're doing it or not, because these threats are real to the population. Don't challenge the narrative, as you say. Don't you dare challenge the narrative, because we'll come for you, and they will. They absolutely will. If it happens to them, it will happen to you.
And Carol, from a, how do you put it, I guess a celebrity point of view or a showbiz entertainment point of view, how do you get your head around, and what do you think is going on when you look at Hugh Edwards, paedophile, covered up by the BBC for decades, announced the late Queen's death on air, doesn't spend a day behind bars, is on some gold-plated state pension for the rest of his days, earning, £400,000 a year or whatever it is. Meanwhile, and I think it is persecution, but it's something we can debate and discuss. But meanwhile, you look at people who are on the other side of the argument. So I would put Russell Brand in that category, the Tate brothers in that category, and the lawfare is unrelenting for them.
Yeah, it is. It's I don't know. It's really hard because a lot of people just accuse those people that you've just named as controlled opposition, and everything that happens to them is they're supposedly in this giant club, and that's the problem. The Hugh Edwards, that's a fine example of just being protected in a club that we're not members of. And so I'm not sure about the Tate brothers. I've never really trusted them, but I don't hate them, and I don't think they should be being locked up every 5 minutes. Definitely, Tommy Robinson has never spoken an untrue word in his life and shouldn't be locked up either. But I do think it's there are very few people that you can name that might be in that club, because they're all the thing protected by politicians, if you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, because of course you can look at individual cases, right? And of course we're meant to live in a world where you're innocent until proven guilty, and Russell Brand and the Tate brothers have actually been convicted of no crime, right? Now, that may change. Let's look at the court case. I've got my own personal views. I do believe that they are victim of state lawfare, actually, on both sides of the Atlantic. But let's see, let's see what happens in the trial. But I mean, Hugh Edwards is guilty. He has been found guilty.
Exactly.
There's no question about that. And so it absolutely feels like there are these double standards which grip the mainstream. And actually, Carol, it's interesting, the Tommy Robinson thing, because obviously we had to exist in the mainstream media. for all of these years, and we know what it's like, and that's why we've now called it out. But it was impossible to have an intelligent conversation about Tommy Robinson in the mainstream media, wasn't it? I mean, I imagine if you had tried to raise his name on Loose Women, it's just like an immediate do not go there. And actually, it was the same at The Sun, it was the same at Talk, it was the same at GB News. Even the apparent right-wing or centre-right mainstream media organisations will not allow you to have that conversation.
Yeah, because I used to have to sit in meetings where everybody would just say the most despicable things. Like they say the same things about the Andrew Tate and the Tate brothers, President Donald Trump as well. And when we were in the meetings and not on the screen, of course I would stand up for these people to the absolute horror of my colleagues and most of the crew. I mean, it was quite unbelievable, really. Like if I'd say something like, oh, well, I actually quite like Donald Trump. It was as though I'd said, you know, you're something really personal about one of their members of their family or something. Like really, really like I was evil and nasty, and like, you know, the disbelief was just incredible. But it's the same with all of them. They will automatically say that people are either sexist or right wing or far right. Usually they say not even right wing, and that is especially with Russell Brand as well, who, you know, some anonymous woman will come out of the woodwork from God knows how long, you know, the Channel 4 documentary that they made, that they didn't name a single person, not one of the people who was accusing him. And he was literally dragged through the mud for that. And as everyone knows, mud sticks. Well, it kind of does, but he's doing all right now. I believe he lives in America
but that's still
now.
trying to lock him up. I mean, they're literally trying to lock him up.
Yeah.
And I think the point with Brand, and this is where you see the corruption of the mainstream media, Carol, is they did not give a shit when he was backing Ed Miliband. They did not give a damn about his history when he was an Owen Jones fanboy. As soon as Russell Brand woke up, and he's one of these interesting people, isn't he? You certainly can't.
It sounds weird saying that now, doesn't it?
Well, it does. It does. But I mean,
like
he
that.
was. The thing is, look, you can't really place him on the political spectrum, can you? He's a challenger of globalism, and he would argue that he probably wasn't on the right, yet now he is described as being far right. So, you know, we live in a weird world. But the fact is, all of these allegations, which come from over 20 years ago, the mainstream media did not give a damn. I mean, I was at The Sun, Carol, when Russell Brand was a hero. I mean, he was being named our Shagger of the Year multiple times. So there is an absolute clear correlation between he questions the narrative on the two big issues of our time, COVID and the war in Ukraine, and they come for him. And they come for him in an almost deranged manner, right? Like, and this is not to say, because people get very sensitive about this, I'm not defending all of Russell Brand's behaviour for his entire life. By the way, neither is he. You know, he's very clear about...
He's very honest about it,
about how depraved his behaviour was when he was in the showbiz world, the entertainment world. But you cannot tell me that when Channel 4 partners with The Times, partners with the Metropolitan Police, and then the rest of the mainstream media, that this was not in some way politically motivated, in some way.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and it was like a massive coordinated pile-on, wasn't it? It was the same with you, though.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
People would be coming out of the woodwork with completely untrue things, and you were completely vindicated. And it's exactly the same. And it's a witch hunt, because they can't have people being popular and out there telling people the truth and trying to warn them about what's going on. And Russell Brand is a very good example now. I mean, he's turned about completely, and he always seems to be in court. I know he's in court again, I think, at the moment, isn't he? Is it going on right now?
Yeah,
I don't know.
It is. I mean, look, it feels to me like the state will not stop until Russell Brand and the Tate brothers and Tommy Robinson are behind bars. That's how I feel about it. And I do have a personal experience with this. I know what it's like. And with me, based on total lies, they were able to achieve their goal, which was to drive me out of the mainstream media. But of course, that's where, thank God, we and really it's down to Trump, isn't it? You know, I couldn't be doing this probably on YouTube if Trump wasn't in the White House. Like, that is how direct the change has been when it comes to free speech.
Yeah, when you think about it, you had a bit of a lucky escape, didn't you, really? I mean,
Yep.
see the state of GB News now, and
God.
it's...
The definition of controlled opposition now, Carol, the definition of it.
It's got to be, hasn't it? I mean, with all the stuff with reform and everything, it's like, you know, they're just in complete denial of what's going on. Now, that's the big question. Who's paying these organisations? Like Talk TV, I think, is the same. And they just buy into everything that you imagine the government wants people to hear. The BBC have been like that for donkey's years. Channel 4 has always been like that. But now these two supposedly independent media organisations are being obviously, I don't want to say bought, but they've got to be bought, haven't they?
Well,
bought
the thing
and
is,
paid for.
but they are the definition of that, because remember, they are controlled by billionaires with their own business interests and their own desire to get close to the government. And look, I know what it's work for billionaires. I did it for 20 years. I hoped GB News was going to be different. I think there were really positive signs in the early days when almost like GB News was considered a joke and the establishment wasn't scared of it. At that point, we did quite amazing stuff. Like I think about the Mark Stein days, for example. But there was a clear change. Neil Oliver, exactly. But there was a clear change. I mean, we were there. We saw it, didn't we? It's like as soon as they jettisoned Mark Stein, hoping to appeal to the establishment, replaced him with Jacob Rees-Mogg, that's where it changed. So a lot of people don't want to hear this. This is a problem, Carol, because I understand, right? You want to have hope. And the hope at the moment is that GB News is different and that Reform UK is different, that is going to be the saviour. I understand that. What I think, I mean, Tommy Robinson, when he was released, said the mainstream media is the cancer killing the United Kingdom. The independent media is the cure. And that is where I think I now fit, I guess, into the ecosystem, because what we can do is hopefully help move the Overton window. Like, okay, if Reform UK is the best that we've got, I'm not convinced at this point it is, with 4 years out from election. But let's just say it is, right? It's the best option. Okay, well then we bloody need to move that Overton window to make them braver, because right now they are so weak.
They're pretty pathetic, aren't they? The infighting, that's one thing. The fact that they seem to kowtow to every other narrative that the government seems to be dictating to the other parties, that they all say the same thing. And I've always said this with politicians, I don't trust Reform at all. I don't trust any of them. It's like all politicians are the same. They just have different faces. And it's like, why do you believe in the country? Do you want to make it a better place for the people that are voting for you? What are you just in it for yourself? And Reform are beginning to look like that. And even Nigel Farage, who I had great hopes for. Yeah. It's so disappointing, Dan, because it was a party that was going to come up and it might have made a difference a while ago, but now suddenly it just seems to be giving in to everything. And Nigel saying, it's not possible to deport illegal immigrants, all these things. It's like, hang on a minute, no, you're the one who used to hang out on Dover Beach and expose all this stuff, and now you say, no, we can't deport them, it's not realistic. There's just so many things. Richard Tice, don't trust him either. I don't trust anybody within that party. It's almost like it's a Trojan horse, do you know what I mean? Get it in and everyone will vote for it, and everyone's kind of falling for Reform. And then once they're in, they do exactly what Keir Starmer and the last Tory government would be doing.
That is my fundamental view on this, right? What is the point of Reform UK gaining power if they actually have no plans to change anything? And I think it's the big difference between Trump term 1 and Trump term 2. And it's like, there has to be that sort of energy. There has to be term two energy, or otherwise it's going to be pointless, and nothing will change.
Yeah. Why don't we have someone like Trump? Why don't we have someone who will storm in there to change everything on day one, like he started as he meant to go on, and I'm kind of jealous, and I would love to go and live in America, but obviously it's too far to get in a dinghy to go over there and just claim asylum, isn't it? I can't do it, and I'd have to get a green card, and I'd have to, it would be impossible. But while he's president, I would go and live there if I could, but I can't.
So do the government actually want to stop the boats, Carol Mcgiffin? Because this has been your theory, and obviously you're in France, and this has been your theory for a number of years, that actually the British deep state have no intention of putting an end to the illegal invasion of the United Kingdom via the Channel, via our southern border. Now, the numbers, Carol, are out of control now. If you thought they were bad under the Conservative Party, they are now at record numbers. By the way, the official figures completely underrepresent what's really going on, because they don't take into account the people that are invading via lorries, and we know those numbers are huge. And do we really trust the official figures when it comes to the boats? Either I don't. So do you stand by your position that actually the British government doesn't want to stop this invasion?
I would go further than that now, Dan. And I remember saying on your show when you were on that channel many times that of course they don't want to stop them. There's a reason that they're allowing this to go ahead, right? They send out the RNLI and other rescue operations to pick them up like a taxi service. They've always done that. But I'm beginning to think that it could possibly be that the government are actively paying these people to come, because the numbers, like you say, are extraordinary. You cannot tell me that, they keep saying, oh, we're going to clamp down on traffickers. And I actually think the government are the people traffickers. I think it is the government who are not only allowing this to happen, but funding it and facilitating it. Because how else could it go on like this? On a good day, you've got over 1,000 people turning up, and they're escorted to accommodation, given money, given phones, it's almost like, do you honestly think those people would be able to afford whatever they say it costs, like $10,000 or whatever, to get in a dinghy in the first place? Do you really think that? Some of the countries that they come from, some of the poorest countries in the world, I'm sorry, Dan, I'm just not buying it anymore. And the reason that there are so many is because it's just become like an option for people. It's like, don't get a visa. And it makes my blood boil even more, because people who want to go to the UK legally, it costs them a hell of a lot of money with visas, with time. If people get there and then, you've got to wait a long time before you get the leave to remain, and you get to stay forever. These people are never going to get sent home, ever. They're there for good now. And the trouble that it's causing with the general population, with the unrest, and it's I don't know. I mean, if I were a conspiracy theorist, which I am, as you know, I would say that they might want to create civil war between people, because.
But why? Why? That's what I need to ask. Why? Because look, I think civil war is coming to the United Kingdom. So does Elon Musk. So does a whole load of people, actually, who I respect on this. Katie Hopkins, for example. I mean, even Lisa Nandy, right? The Labour culture secretary said that she believes the north of England is going to burn. So why do you think our leaders would want to encourage civil war? What would be the motivation behind that? More control of the population?
Well, yeah, obviously, because war is that's what they use every single time to get more control over people, to extract money from people and control them even more. If they have a state of emergency, like they did with the COVID, they just inflict this state of emergency on people, and then they have to do everything that you tell them to do. I do think it's about control, and I do think it's that, or it's a massive distraction for what's coming, which is, if I don't know what you think about that, but the financial meltdown, the world global financial meltdown is definitely coming. There's unsustainable debt everywhere, and it could be that would be, I don't know, a massive distraction from this as people just lose all of their money, because that's what I think is ultimately coming. And this is why they need to get the digital ID in place. And they use the illegal immigration as an excuse to bring in this digital ID, don't they? They keep saying,
Yes.
we need it to tackle illegal immigration. Yeah, but no, you don't need it.
And that's
what
the
you
Tony
need to do,
Blair argument, and he seems to be pulling the strings again, Carol.
yeah, exactly. But I think they all think the same thing. But you don't need a digital ID to stop illegal immigration. You just need to stop the goddamn boats. It's as simple as that. But they don't want to, because they're engineering the entire crisis. It is a massive crisis, and not one of those people is ever going to be sent home.
No way.
I don't know.
No
Where
way.
does it go?
No way. And then you see Matt Goodwin's research from last week. White Britons will become a minority by 2063. The foreign-born
Sooner than
and
that,
their
I'd
descendants,
say.
well, exactly, will be a majority by 2079, and roughly 1 in 5 will follow Islam by the year 2100. Well, look, I think virtually anyone sound, and anyone I've spoken to about these figures, thinks Matt Goodwin's done a good job, but actually he's been way too conservative, because you only have to look at the birth rates and compare the birth rates, for example, in the Muslim population compared to the Christian population, and you see where this is going. And again, so little fight back, so little pushback. It's coming from the likes of Charlie Kirk in the United States to actually point out there is an Islam invasion going on of the United Kingdom. No one is prepared to talk about it. And yet, when Richard Tice of Reform UK was presented with Matt Goodwin's figures, he just dismissed them. When Nigel Farage was asked if he wanted to deport, well, even actually if he just wanted mass deportations, he said it was impossible.
Yeah, exactly. Couldn't do it. I mean, that that's why you can't trust any of these politicians to do the right thing. It's they obviously want it to happen. And Tony Blair, it makes me want to swear, the fact that he's still piping up and going, digital ID will solve this problem. No, it will solve the other problem that's coming, or it will stop people from protesting or doing anything really, because you'll have them, then you'll own everything that they do. But yeah, I don't know where I read something this morning, I'm sure, about apparently 72 schools in the UK, was it, don't have any, or just like a few white British pupils in. Was it? I don't know. I'm sure it was 72, but I'm not sure if they were 100% non-white British, or there was a small percentage. But even that really is terrifying, isn't it? Because that's the future. And like you say, with the birth rates and everything else, I really think that I do think it's an invasion. I've always thought it was an invasion. And I do think that it's on track, and probably sooner than Matt Goodwin says.
Yeah, I mean, already, so the statistics about the schools, Carol, is that already, like now, today, in the United Kingdom, white British pupils are now the minority in 1 in 4 schools. And then this was the post on X from Charlie Kirk, who I think is brilliant, and I think is doing brilliant things. And there was this video from Radio Genoa saying in London there are so many Muslims that they are forced to pray even on pavements. This is what an Islamic invasion looks like. And Charlie Kirk replied saying there are 50 Muslim majority countries in the world. ask yourself why they insist on immigrating to the Christian West. Now, Charlie Kirk is someone who in the US now is considered a very influential figure, close to Donald Trump, you know, very much on the mainstream right. But in this country, Carol Mcgiffin, what he's saying would get you cancelled from society, because Charlie Kirk is not saying anything that Tommy Robinson hasn't said for years.
Yeah, I know. And look what happens to him every time he opens his mouth. You know, that's just terrifying. I don't know how anyone can't look at that footage and just think what is going on here. But obviously people don't say anything, A, because they'll be accused of being racist or be an Islamophobe or whatever buzzword they've got for people like us now who object to all of this. But then you look at the politicians and they're just as bad. They'll just say, oh, let's build some more mosques so they don't have to pray on the streets or something like that. And you can't, I don't know, we'll probably get cancelled for talking about it now. I know you're independent media now, but you know, any of these things, like, people can pick up on what you say and then literally destroy your career. Luckily, I haven't got a career to destroy anymore.
Well, no, the great thing about the independent media, I guess, is we have to be brave. But there is there is a motivation. There is a political motivation behind all of this. So look at this video, for example, that went viral before the last election in the United Kingdom. Angela Rayner in a mosque, right? Without one other woman in that mosque, something that as a self-proclaimed feminist, you would think she would never accept. But there is an absolute necessity for Labour to pander to the sectarian vote because they are facing complete wipeout at the next election. But that's on the left. Then you've got on the apparent right, although I do note that Reform UK don't describe themselves anymore as a right-wing party, but Reform UK saying it's impossible to win an election in the United Kingdom without the Muslim vote. So this is the problem. You're going to get a lot of pandering to this extremism, and it is extremism that is so not compatible with our way of life. I mean, I think a lot about an interview that I conducted with Suhail Ahmed, who was the de-radicalized gay, actually, but Muslim terrorist who planned to blow up Canary Wharf, British born. And the stories that he tells, Carol, about what is being taught to British born Muslims in the mosques of East London is absolutely chilling. Because, by the way, it means throwing me as a gay man off the top of buildings. That is what they're being taught. And for you, well, don't leave the home. You know, so then you've got this question about, okay, well, do we need to ban the burqa, which I guess goes against our libertarian instincts, but you can understand it.
I don't think that would change a thing, and I don't think anyone would take any notice of it. And in fact, I'm not for that anyway. I don't want to ban anything. I don't like that look particularly, but you know, I'm not having to wear it. But you do see, you see these early pictures of Iran and the capital of Afghanistan. I've forgotten Kabul. Was it Kabul? You see these women in the 70s, 60s and 70s just wearing Western clothes and short skirts and everything else. And in a very, very short, relatively short space of time, they look like these pictures here. And women aren't allowed to show any kind of flesh. They're not allowed to. I mean, they get stoned to death for the simplest of things. And you just think the hypocrisy of the left when it comes to Islam, the way that it's okay for them, but it's not okay for anybody else. Anyone, you can be accused of being sexist all the time, but you can't say that to a Muslim man. And in actual fact, that's exactly what most of them are. I know it's an inconvenient truth, but it's true. And the whole, the gay side of it all as well. Like,
yes, well, the left is increasingly becoming homophobic. I've realised, haven't they, Carol? Because they support this extreme Islam ideology, which means that we can't exist, but they also support the extreme trans ideology, which is all about changing the gender of young gay and lesbian kids, basically. So it's like, this is the thing. The whole thing is twisted now. In the past, people would say, oh, on the right is homophobic. The right doesn't believe in women's rights. Well, I'm sorry, that has been turned on its head, because I would argue the left has proven itself to be homophobic.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It's just messed up, isn't it? It's completely messed up. And people buy into that as if, if you're on the left, you're a caring, more inclusive, kinder person. But it's the exact opposite
100%.
of that.
100%.
Isn't it?
And Carol, did you work with Syra Khan at Loose Women?
I did. Yeah.
What did you think of her?
Well, I quite liked her. Yeah, I liked her. I didn't have much in common with her, but I did like her.
Yeah, I always like to do it. No, the reason I ask, I don't know if you've seen it, because obviously she was someone who I thought was starting to accept all of this, right? Because she, from my memory of it, she very publicly moved away from the Muslim faith because she was so concerned about the issues with women's rights, and there was a lot of pushback, and I really thought that was a great thing that she did. But she's gone viral last week because she went on the Jeremy Vine show and did this sort of like Rosie O'Donnell thing of like, if reform get into power, I'm going to leave the United Kingdom. I don't know if you've seen it, but let's just have a look. No. Okay, let's have a look.
Just on culture wars, Trump has just done that. So let's see.
Yeah, but it doesn't last. It's not sustainable.
May not need.
It's not sustainable. You'll get people moving out of the country. If reform come in on this kind of propaganda, I will leave this country.
Where will you go?
I'll go to Portugal. I'll go anywhere. It's better than living here.
Sounds nice.
Your reaction, Carol?
Wow, really? Yeah. I don't know. See, I don't know what to make of Syra and her opinions, because they do change all the time. She was, I believe she's married to a Westerner, and I think her family not disowned her, but it was very difficult for her from outside of the faith. And so she was always kind of, but I don't know. She's another one. She just changes, blows hot and cold, changes with the wind all the time. And to go on the Jeremy Vine show, oh God, I mean, you can't even think right on that show. You have to be like left, and it's almost like sometimes I don't want to accuse Syra of playing to the audience, but I think that sometimes she does, and there are people that I think she looks up to. The same things that she's saying. I mean, leave the country if reform, really? I mean, it's not really making much sense to me. So no, I don't know.
No, exactly. I mean, it's hardly like, for the reasons we've discussed, it's hardly like reform are actually advocating like the scariest policy position. Certainly they're not going anywhere near as far as we would like. I do think it's always hilarious. I mean, come on, sometimes you do have to laugh, Carol, because the other one who always does this shtick on Jeremy Vine is Yasmin Alabaya Brown.
Oh my God.
Like, she's a woman who moved to this country, right, as an immigrant and got everything from this country, an incredible career as a journalist and a columnist that she would never have had, never ever have been able to have. Like, she has benefited in every way from this country, yet is constantly describing us as racist. Constantly. Yeah. It's like, surely you are literally the definition. You are literally the walking, talking definition of why the United Kingdom is not a racist country.
I can't believe that she wasn't number one in your chart of the world's worst people.
Yeah, I think she's going to have to come in next year, to be honest.
Because she really is like one of the worst people. I wouldn't even want to pass her in the street. Oh, I've always... And I used to watch her sometimes on Jeremy Vine, or when it was Matthew Wright, I think, with a friend of mine who used to do it. And I used to watch it. And it used to amuse me that she could be so ridiculous, and so hypocritical, just absolutely. Oh, but now it doesn't. I can't laugh at her anymore. She is just revolting. I'm sorry, but she is, and I can't. I don't ever want to hear her utter another word anywhere. Don't have her on the show, Dan.
Oh, I promise you. I promise you that isn't going to happen.
Thank God for that.
The end of Loose Women. Did woke kill it off? Carol Mcgiffin, you were my favourite Loose Women. But you were there, right, during an era where this was actually an amazing show. And people might laugh at me for saying this, but I don't give a damn. Loose Women was must watch. I would watch every single lunchtime during this era. It was certainly not politically correct. It was great fun. But actually, you would genuinely cover the news stories from, I thought, a perspective like what ITV should do, right? Working class, connected to the people, and I absolutely loved it. And we were there, Carol. We were working at Woke ITV, as I now call it, as we saw Elon Musk's woke mind virus literally infiltrate this show, literally kill it off, literally treat their audience as if they were fools. And I don't know if you have mixed emotions about this axing, because I'm sure there are still people on Loose Women, both in front of the camera and behind the scenes, who you respect and who you're friends with. But for me, I think they deserve this, Carol, because as soon as you start producing a show which looks down on your audience, which tries to treat your audience as if they need to go to some type of education camp, then you don't deserve to be on air.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't know why anybody's surprised that this is happening to them, because, again, I occasionally watch it, and mainly for my own amusement, because some ridiculous topic will come up, and I would just my eyes would just roll to the back of my head, and I'd be thinking, can you imagine the audience sitting there wanting to have maybe a laugh now and again, or talk about something that's important to them. But the problem has always been, and not back in the day when it was brilliant, and up until 2013 it was absolutely brilliant, and that's when what's his name, Martin Frizzell, came in and completely wiped all the old panelists out and brought in the new lot, and
yeah,
that's
so that's what's really interesting, Carol. That was a key moment of change, wasn't it? 2013, because up until that point, it had been this brilliant show. A new boss comes in, and he's very favoured amongst ITV, isn't he? I guess he's a member of the establishment, the husband of Fiona Phillips. And what happened? Why do you think they decided to change the show?
It's always the case with TV that if a new boss comes in, they want to put their stamp on it. They don't like the idea of someone who was there before them making it successful. They can do it better. That's what always happens. That's why shows get ruined. That's why everything has to change now and again, because this new boss wants this person anchoring the show. They wanted it to be, apparently, I don't know because I wasn't there. I left way before that all kicked off. It's like they wanted it to be more serious, more newsy. So they obviously thought it was, patronizing or what, which it wasn't. It was so popular back in those days. And the thing is, it's like it didn't treat the audience as idiots. It knew its audience as well. Like, they just don't know their audience anymore. ITV Daytime do not know who their audience is, and they probably never will, because the audience are probably all buggered off, and that's probably why they can't afford to keep the shows anymore, because nobody wants to advertise on them because they've got no audience. But when you tune into Loose Women and you see the beginning and what they're going to be talking about, and you just think, oh no, not the menopause again. And it's like, can you imagine if you're if you're at home and you're a woman sitting watching daytime TV and you are having a bad menopause and you don't want to put the telly on and have a load of 4 women talking about everybody's having a bad menopause. Not everyone has a bad menopause. And if you're having a bad menopause, well, you want to be cheered up. You want to forget about it. So let's put daytime TV on. And all you've got is these, this grizzling, sniveling people. Everyone's crying. Everyone's upset. It's like it's celebrating victims. That's what it's doing. Loose Women never used to do that. It used to celebrate strong women. And they were all strong women. Now it's like, let's get a victim on. Let's get someone who's something terrible has happened to them. And it's almost every single day. It's like, it's just taken all the fun out of it. And it's no wonder people are switching off. And so they've got to go back on to 30 weeks a year. I'm surprised it lasted as long as it did in that format, because most of the time I find it pretty unwatchable.
Well, can I go one step further, Carol, and slightly disagree with you in terms of the bosses at ITV? Because I put it to you that they do know their audience, but they have a disdain for their audience. They look down on the audience and they think, well, actually, we can teach these terrible northern working class people how to
normal
think.
People,
yeah,
you mean normal
the
people.
normies, as they call them, those terrible normies who aren't part of our little Soho House set, in North London. And because it's not just, this is not a coincidence. Have you watched, I can't anymore, but have you watched Coronation Street recently? It's the same thing. Like, they are constantly preaching and pushing a message. And so I think they do know the audience, but it's like they believe their job is to change the audience, which is why you see when, for example, something like Black Lives Matter happens in the US, this sort of hysteria at ITV.
But that's so typical of fake liberals, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're not liberal at all. They want you to think
like
what they
them.
think. And yeah, absolutely. And so they do drive these sort of underlying messages to everybody. So, you probably are right. They probably do know who their audience is, but they hate them. They hate working class people. They hate, talk about going on a jet to Marbella or somewhere like that with a load of hens. They're disgusted by it. They just think it's so common and shockingly terrible, that why would anyone do that? I wouldn't get on the plane. And it's just normal people. And when I was working there, when I went back in 2018, I used to deliberately say, well, actually, I'd rather be on that plane with those people than with the people that you would prefer to be on the plane, which is a load of London metropolitan fake liberal something beginning with T's.
Or even C's. Or even C's.
Or C's, yeah. Do you know what I mean, though, Dan? It's
no, I totally do. I totally do.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, because they thought that they were above their audience. And I think there was such an arrogance at ITV, Carol.
Yeah, preaching all the time.
Yeah, and they thought that these people were just too stupid to change the channel. But what they didn't realise is that there's a media revolution going on. So it's not necessarily that people change the channel, right, from 3 to 4 to 5, right? Because who wants to go to any of those woke mainstream channels? But what people are doing now is connecting YouTube to their TV, getting a whole new world of independent media as a result. And the ratings, I looked when this big announcement was made the other day. Carol, the ratings are down like 50% across the board, right, at ITV Daytime. So they have literally lost their audience. There's been a cratering of their audience. But I'm interested in what happened when you went back, because this change had gone on, but for some reason they thought, and I don't know why, maybe it was to boost the ratings. I think the ratings even at that point were really struggling. They thought, okay, well, we need to go back to some of the original magic, and so they got you and I think Denise Welsh returned at the same time in a big bang. But what
Yeah.
happened when you went back, and you'd been pretty outspoken, let's be honest, about loose women. I mean, you'd sort of slagged them off a little bit, hadn't you, in the intervening years? So what happened
Me?
when you went back? Never. What happened when you went back and you saw that all of a sudden this was a woke production? Talk to me about it.
It didn't strike me back in 2018 as a woke production, but it was different. It was definitely different. I knew what I was going into, because it wasn't the same in the sense that the people had all changed, and there were too many women. There are still too many women. They've got like 25 women or something on that rotate. And you just think, well, you know, people can never get to know anybody if they're only on, you know, once every 3 weeks or whatever it is. So it was different, but I didn't actually see it as a woke production. I saw it as kind of victim centric, which used to really piss me off, and it just annoys me because I used to think,
but at this point there wasn't massive censorship, is that right? You could still sort of go in when you first went back and say what you thought, because I mean Trump was president by then, right?
Oh yeah, no, I mean I did say on Loose Women back then. Oh my God, the uproar about Trump. I think all I said was, if I lived in America, I would vote for Trump. That's what I said. And I mean, there was just disgust. I was surrounded by people who couldn't believe it. And then, you know, you get a few people on Twitter going, you need to sack Carol Mcgiffin. She supports Trump. And you just think, well, hang on a minute, what's going on? And probably after that, I was never allowed to mention him again, because that was one of the biggest problems with Loose Women. They were always pandering to the Twitterati, I used to call them. And, you know, a few people on Twitter, keyboard warriors, would be on there just going, this show's disgusting, do this, sack so-and-so, all the time. And they would always take notice of it all and abide by it all. And it's like,
so they would tell you, they would actually say to you quite specifically, Carol, please just don't go there on Donald Trump, or like how would those conversations sort of happen? Because I know about my experience at ITV, which I'll mention, but how did they happen for you?
Well, usually it would be like they would bring a topic up, and you would think that they would know exactly what I would be saying or wanting to say. And if it was, say, you know, Trump, and I was trying to support him or defend him, or, you know, and I remember we did it, you know, when Sadiq Khan had that big balloon blown up,
the blimp
or something, and I just said, that's pathetic. It's absolutely bloody pathetic. I got absolutely slated for that as well. So I think what they did after that was they would change the subject. They would drop the topics where there might be a chance that I would say something that would get people sending tweets in to say sack Carol Mcgiffin or whoever who was saying something against the narrative. So it kind of adhered.
Yeah, so story selection is very important, actually. This is often what people don't realise within the mainstream media. Let's just not take the risk of Carol Mcgiffin saying something about Trump that our viewers might not like. So we just won't talk about Trump at all when she's on. And you saw it happen at GB News too, where it was like, okay, we're just going to pretend that Tommy Robinson and Katie Hopkins do not exist, right? They're not alive, okay? They're just like, they're unpersoned. And now, ironically, it's me. You know, I don't exist according to GB News. Okay, but then something really big did happen, Carol. The COVID madness, the pandemic, however you want to put it. And you are incredibly outspoken over that period. You would appear on my talk radio show then, and we were really letting loose at a time when you weren't able to do that. But yet Loose Women was, I mean, ITV Daytime were guilty, I believe, of actually the most shocking crimes over that period. They pushed the lockdowns in the most deranged manner. And yet you're having to go into that building, or I don't know if you were doing it on Zoom at that point, but how on earth did you cope with that, and how did they deal with you over that period? Because I'd left by then. I was gone in 2019.
Well, to start with, I think they cancelled the entire show, if I remember rightly. Because Loose Women is always been the poor relation in daytime. There's always been priority to This Morning, and now GB, not GB, Good Morning Britain, whatever it's called. That's getting the priority now, and even Lorraine's being sidelined. So the first thing they did was cancel Loose Women. They didn't cancel This Morning. They didn't cancel Lorraine or the morning show, just Loose Women. So they cancelled it to start with, and then they decided to bring it back, but only on Zoom. So all 4 women were on Zoom. And do you know what? To start with, I was quite surprised at what they would allow me to say about it, because it was a horrendous time, and they were pushing everything. They were pushing the lockdowns. I remember just before they went off air, and just before the first lockdown, I think it was March the 20th or somewhere around that in 2020. And we did the discussion on the show, and I remember them saying, do you think we should lock down or not? And I just said, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I was furious about it. I said, it won't change anything. If there is a virus, it's not going to go away just like by locking people in their homes. And this is like imprisoning people in their own homes. You've got to lock down, and you can't go out, and you can't travel, you can't do anything. And I was really outraged. And even that caused a massive storm. And so when it got taken off air, and then when we came back, I was quite surprised that they still kind of allowed me to talk about the lockdowns and how wrong it all was, and then the worst part was the masks as well. I mean, I was very anti-mask, and they would literally push it. They did an item once where they had like a person come in to show them how to express them with a mask on, right? I mean, it was just so horrendous, the idea. And I said to the boss at the time there, I said, look, I'm not doing this. I'm in my own home, and I'm not putting a mask on, especially not in my own home. I'm not doing it. And I said, but, I'm happy to go on and say why, because I do see it as a form of tyranny and control, and it wasn't necessary. We all know that. I think it was Chris, the medical guy. Chris, what's his name?
Chris Whitty.
Yes.
You've blocked him out.
Chris Whitty. He said right at the beginning of the supposed pandemic, masks won't make the slightest bit of difference. I think Fauci said it as well. Yes. They all said it.
When there were no masks, when no one was making any money from the masks, Carol, we weren't. But I mean, look at this on Loose Women. And yeah. Do you know, they even had to apologise for this, because apparently Kay Adams said something about the positioning of the mask, which wasn't the. So they went mad. Okay, but so how do you then go from being like, I'm done? Like, what was the final straw for you?
Well, I mean, even in the COVID time, I said, I'm not doing this show anymore until this is over, because I can't deal with the Zoom, and I can't deal with, being told not what I can and cannot say about it. Because just to tell you about the mask, just to finish the story, I said to them, I'll tell you why I don't want to wear a mask on the show. I said, if you won't let me do that, take me off the show. They took me off the show. So I wasn't allowed to do the show, even while they all sat there in masks trying to go, pulling stupid facial expressions. Oh my God. I mean, it was so infuriating. But I mean, at the end, so I stopped doing it. I didn't do it for about 4 or 5 months. And then I went back in a sort of blaze of surprise, and it was all back to normal. It all felt like back to normal, because we were in the studio again, and you could only have 3 people. But towards the end, when I left, it was. I mean, there were loads of different reasons why. Contractually, they were trying to tell everybody that they were employees, but they're not employees. That was the main reason I left, and also it was becoming very, very stressful for me, that show. And, you know, it was affecting my health in a way, because it was always a time when you weren't allowed to say this or you weren't allowed to say that, and you had to sit there and pretend that you cared about someone who, you know, I don't know, had an unfortunate episode of something. And it was just exhausting. It wore me out. And at the time, Mark said to me, he said, look, you know, just leave. So I kind of did. But yeah, the whole COVID thing was a big, massive test, and
They
got
failed.
worse and worse. Yeah,
They failed.
Yeah.
They
Well, they
failed
did.
on every count, just like Piers Morgan failed, Good Morning Britain failed, Woke. Yeah, I mean, I think it was absolutely the bottom line. But look,
And the vaccines as well. Don't forget about the vaccines, the way they pushed the vaccines, and they would all sit there and go, wow, you know, we're all vaxxed, we're all double vaxxed. And I would go, no, we're not. And I'm never getting vaxxed. And it was hard. It was really hard to go to work back then, because they would send a test to my house and say, you've got to have this COVID test because you can't come in if you've got COVID. And so I used to run it under the tap and send it off, and then, you know, it would come back negative.
Carol, I remember you wouldn't come on in the early days of GB News because they tried to test everyone at the door, and I actually used you as the test case with management because GB News, crazy. They were always COVID crazy like that. And I said, we will not get any guests into the studio if you insist on them doing tests. I had Lord Jonathan Sumption on the first night, who was fighting against all of this madness. So they made exceptions to my guests on the show. But that's the thing. No one was immune from this madness. But look, I do want to talk a bit more about what's going on with ITV daytime, because it's not just Loose Women. I mean, this is the whole... all of the shows, including Lorraine, where I was. But just stand by, Carol, because we've got much more on that in just 1 minute. But first, these days, we're living through economic whiplash, soaring prices, vanishing savings, and headlines that seem designed to confuse more than inform. We're told this is all normal, that history's been rewritten for our own good, and that embracing these changes is the only path forward. But every outlet tells a different version of reality, and the so-called fact checkers are just enforcing the approved narrative. Luckily, there's a solution. It's Ground News, hands down the easiest way to stay informed. It cuts through all the bias and spin so you can actually see what's going on and make up your own mind. I have it on my phone and in my bookmarks online because it's become so essential to my daily life. You can see for yourself at ground.news/outspoken. But I want to show you this incredible website and app in action. So let's use the breaking story of Donald Trump agreeing to cut tariffs on UK auto, steel and aluminium as part of a trade deal with Britain, one that could reshape global trade and has sparked debate on both sides of the political aisle. So on Ground News, you can see quite clearly in one place that over 500 sources are covering the story. But then what Ground News does is instantly show how it's being covered, broken down by whether those organisations lean to the left or the right. This is called the bias distribution chart. Then if you scroll down, you can actually see every headline about the story, but along with the political bias and ownership of the publication. So most of the coverage is from outlets in the political centre, but here's where it gets interesting. 49% of the sources come from outlets owned by giant media conglomerates, so no wonder the narratives feel so coordinated. When looking at the headlines, the left covered the story with skepticism. Wired fixated on the struggling reputation of Jaguar and framed the deal as a potential way to resurrect the brand. Bloomberg chose vague language, calling it a framework, which subtly questions whether the deal is even real. But the coverage on the right-leaning outlets was far more confident, with GB News celebrating a major victory for UK auto manufacturers and the New York Sun calling it a full and comprehensive trade deal that strengthens US-UK ties. Now, my favourite feature is actually the Ground News blind spot feed. It surfaces upwards of 20 stories every day that receive the majority of coverage from one side of the political spectrum. So if you love the news like I do, the blind spot feed is the best way to get a balanced perspective on what's happening. Go to ground.news/outspoken or scan the QR code to subscribe today and get 40% off the same Vantage plan I use for unlimited access. That's ground.news/outspoken. But now, back to the show. Carol Mcgiffin, it's not just Loose Women that is a casualty of this complete disaster at ITV, Woke ITV, as I call it, because actually all of the daytime shows have in some way been axed or scaled down, like half the staff have lost their jobs. And I think, Carol, it is because of Woke infiltrating ITV. I think they had absolutely no understanding of the fact that their viewers were changing. And they were continuing to act, Carol, as if they were sort of making TV in the 1990s, not understanding actually that everyone's getting their news in a different way now, from YouTube, from citizen journalists, and they were living in the past.
Yeah, I get that, and I suppose it is true. I mean, especially with like a lot of young people, they never watch television, and the fact that ITV think, oh, if we get all these like young influencers on, everyone's going to start watching daytime TV. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Of course they're not going to, but I don't think it's just that. They can stand there and say, look, the reason that we're suffering is because of, you know, online TV. People don't watch TV anymore. They go online for news or for entertainment or anything, or streaming services. Maybe it's just because it's rubbish and they just aren't very good at it anymore. You know, they don't consider that. They don't consider that really great shows. You know, when I went back to Loose Women that time, I thought, you know, this is great. We might be able to make Loose Women great again. But it just proved completely impossible. And sometimes, you know, if I've ever seen anything on This Morning or on YouTube or whatever, you just think, you know, this is ridiculous. This is not popular. This is not what people want. But they don't. I'd go back to my point. They really don't know what people want, and they tell them what they want all the time, and they give it to them and then force it down their throats. So that's probably why. I mean, they'll be driving people to go online. And entertainment and streaming services, and you know, it's like, you know, what do they expect? But you know, lots of people are going to lose their jobs, and I feel really, really bad for those people behind the scenes who are going to, up to 300 people apparently. But I bet you anything, no one at the top is going to get axed because of this disaster, and it is a disaster, and it is, like that headline says, it is a bloodbath. Yeah. And the women are apparently absolutely raging about it. I haven't spoken to any of them about it, but it's like, well, yeah, of course, because they're like, oh, we were kept in the dark. We weren't told of anything. They're never told of anything. They never know what's going on. And Loose Women is the poor relation. So that's the one that's suffering the most. Lorraine Kelly, she's on a contract, so she'll still be getting paid the entire amount for whether she does half an hour for 10 weeks a year or for 50 weeks a year. So you just, you know, I do feel for them, but I don't buy into this kind of, oh no, all their worlds have fallen apart because this show's ended. It's like, hang on a minute, what did you expect? Did you think it was just going to go on forever? And especially in the way it is. It's, you know,
totally. When you have lost half your audience, like 50% of your audience have said goodbye. Like, if you do not understand that, say, crisis, then you are living in cloud cuckoo land. And I think so much of it, Carol, is that an agenda was being pushed. I really do. I mean, with me, it obviously was connected to Meghan Markle because ITV made this really weird decision. Do you remember with Piers Morgan and everything? And I know you've got loads of issues with Piers Morgan, and so do I. But I think he was definitely right on Meghan Markle. Okay, like he came on air after that Oprah interview, that appalling Oprah interview where she had lied about so many things, and he said, I do not believe her claims that she was suicidal in the palace. Well, he was completely right, okay? He was completely right. But ITV actually backed Meghan Markle. Like, Meghan Markle emailed the chief executive, who's this very woke woman called Carolyn McCall, who used to run The Guardian. Tom Bradby, who's like really good friends with Harry and Meghan, got involved, and Piers left. Now, I'd already left by that point because I was sat down and told, you cannot be rude about Meghan Markle. And I just thought, to hell with that, because I'm not being rude about Meghan Markle. I am reporting true stories. Like, it's not even about my view. I was at that point on that show, I was a journalist reporting about her terrible behavior. But I mean, how bizarre And how out of touch that they made a decision to back Meghan Markle over Piers Morgan, because whatever you think of Piers Morgan, he had taken Good Morning Britain to those record ratings.
Oh yeah, you've got to give him credit where credit's due. He did. He kind of saved that show. I can't remember who the boss was who thought that would work, and it did work. But yeah, you're right. To back Meghan Markle, but why? What was behind that? I mean, who was paying who? Somebody. There had to be a higher power.
Well, doesn't it just show
decision.
how closely they work with each other? Like, and how often is this going on, Carol, where we don't know about it? I think that's what's so concerning. Like in this case, it came to the fore. Then, oh my goodness, I've got to ask you about this one too, because this is the one that riles me. And again, I know it's a controversial topic, but I don't shy away from it. So Loose Women started getting criticism for all white panels, right? So there's 4 of you on the panel, and sometimes they would all be white. And interestingly, it was actually the Daily Mail that made some huge issue about that. Now, I would argue, well, sometimes in a country that is majority white, you're going to have the odd all-white panel. But no, ITV decided that this was a real issue, and so tried to move away from having all-white panels. But then, of course, they did that thing, Carol, which happens throughout the industry, and I describe it as woke overcorrection, which is that they started on a regular basis having an all-black panel, not an Asian panel, like an all-black panel. Now, remember, the black population, Carol, I think it makes up about 8% of the United Kingdom. So I simply posted on X how Woke ITV does diversity, not from any other aspect apart from saying that there is a hypocrisy. There is a hypocrisy to saying an all-white panel is bad, yet we are going to celebrate an all-black panel. Well, Charlene White, and did you ever work with her?
I did.
Oh, what's she like?
Yeah, she's nice.
Be honest.
Oh, well, the thing is, she was very nice to me, and I was nice to her. See, the thing is, I don't dislike any of those women. I don't
No, I
dislike
know. And
any
you
of them,
don't want to
but
slag them off. I get that.
No,
I
and there
get
are
that.
a hell of a lot of them that I don't have a single thing in common with, and not just beliefs, but a lot of things. But you get on with it.
Okay, well, I
But
think you can respond to this though, because I believe what she did was disgusting. Given you saw what I just posted, right? So I literally said, how Woke ITV does diversity. That is making a political point, okay? It is certainly not at all a racist attack. Anyone who knows me knows I'm like the least racist person in the world. Charlene White posts, bitterness is a very lonely colour, Dan. Black women face some of the worst abuse on social media. That is a fact. So this man, with a following of almost 500,000, well, it was well over 500,000, but there you go. She's not one who gets her facts right very often, decides to target 4 black women for having successful careers. Riling the racists for clout and clicks really is the weirdest pastime. Well, how on earth was I doing any of that, right? I was pointing out, Carol, a political decision that ITV had made. I mean, I love Brenda Edwards, right? I think she's a wonderful woman. I've known her for years and years and years since she was on X Factor. But you can understand that if an all-white panel is unacceptable, then why in a country where you've got less than 10% of the population that is black, are you having an all-black panel? And I actually spoke to some people behind the scenes at Loose Women at the time who told me that they were really angry too, because even amongst that group of people, Carol, there's no diversity. Like, they are all a particular type of black woman who thinks in the same way, who lives in the same place. So it's not real diversity. And that was the point I was making. And I think to throw around terms like racist and targeting successful black women is actually, like, I think it's sick. I think what Charlene White did was sick.
Yeah, well, she kind of had a go at me when I came on your show when I left Loose Women. Do you remember? And when we were talking about, how it was woke, and she criticised me for like saying I didn't know what the meaning of woke was, and how could I possibly question the fact that minority groups would be given opportunities when you know, they're given opportunities. They always have been given opportunities. But anyway, you know, aside from that, that was a bit, I just ignored it. But Lucy Connolly used to get a lot of stick because it wasn't diverse enough, right? So there weren't enough black or minority women on the panels, and they were majority white. But the thing is, no one ever mentioned that until people started complaining, because there were no, and they employed a few black women to do the shows, but they kind of didn't work out. They got now, they've got four successful black women, and they put them on together, and they're allowed to talk about all being black and celebrating the fact that this is an historic moment because 4 black women are presenting the show for the first time. And 4 white women wouldn't go on there and go, "Oh, isn't this great? We're all white." I mean, it's just so ludicrous and ridiculous. And then to cap it all, that show, the first all black female show, won the BAFTA, and it was like, nothing that happened on Loose Women before that ever existed. This is why we've won the BAFTA, and took all the credit for it. Not, it really was kind of galling for the other women to sort of stand by and just go, "Well, okay, well, we didn't win the BAFTA then, you won the BAFTA," which was a very sort of strange and difficult time. But no, as you say, there's rules for them and rules for us. No one was allowed to say anything at the time. So I don't know. I mean, it is annoying, and it is annoying that you get labelled racist for even mentioning the fact that it's like, you go in the comments sometimes on Twitter when they do things like this, and then there's obviously bots, or I don't know if they still have the 77th Brigade. They just start trolling these people and say, "You're racist, you say you say this, you say that." And it's like the label that you get given because you're just pointing something out, a visible truth. And it's very frustrating, especially in television. I don't know if you've even noticed, certain adverts. I mean, the adverts now, I mean, they're just overrepresented, if you like.
Totally. I thought diversity, I always signed up to the fact that diversity meant you accurately represent the population of the United Kingdom. Well, if you watch Woke ITV, you would think that the majority of the population was not white, that 1 in 4 people were trans, that 1 in 3 people had a disability. It's ludicrous. It's gone too far. And I think calling that out doesn't mean you're against diversity. I just want an accurate reflection of the country. But Carol, oh my goodness, it has been so good that you've come out of your semi-retirement. But of course, you're not entirely off the scene, because I'm a huge fan of your podcast, What's Your Problem, which actually became a favourite of mine during lockdown. I'd always tell you, wouldn't I? I'd listen to it when I was going to sleep. And that's hilarious. And you still are writing for Best Magazine too, right?
Yeah, I'm still writing for Best Magazine every week. And the podcast, I've got to say, is doing really well now. And it's been going for, can you believe this, 5.5 years.
God,
and we've
that's
done
terrifying.
Yeah, isn't it? I know. And we still do it twice a week, and it's really not a problem. And I've been doing that column in Best now since 2017. So these are, long-standing jobs, which I'm very, very precious about. So so I'm not completely retired. And don't forget, Dan, that I'm still writing my second book, which is
I mean, Carol. This book has had the longest gestation period in history. It's got to be bloody good now.
I live in the south of France, and there's so much rosé wine to drink. It's like, it's impossible. But no, I am actually working on it. So
okay, and will Outspoken become part of your portfolio now after your first go?
Well, yeah, I would love that, actually, Dan. Yeah, I hope so.
Good. I'm going to hold you to that. So. She's committed.
Yeah.
She's committed. No, Mcgiff, I love you. You're one of my favourite people. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we will speak very
You're
soon.
very welcome, Dan. It's been lovely to talk to you for so long.
Brilliant, Carol Mcgiffin. Of course, the podcast, Problem with Nick Abbott, that's available on the Global Player, and her weekly column in Best Magazine. Now, there is no Uncancelled After Show today, but it does return on Tuesday. So do sign up. Get prepared for them. www.outspoken.live. Substack, such an important community for me. That's where we broadcast it. It is a free speech platform. It protects me from big tech cancellation. But we are back tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. We've got a biggie tomorrow, a biggie, an interview you have all been asking for. Mr. Mark Steyn speaks out for the first time on his exit from GB News. So do hit subscribe right now if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble. Turn on the notification bell, and most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.